time. I think we're ready to start.
Elahe, would you like to kick us off?
Sure. Greeting from California and welcome to the Women's Intercultural Network session, Cities for CEDAW, for our future, gender equity, climate solution, and youth engagement. Before talking a few minutes about WIN, I want to share something that happened this morning for me. When in 2001, we, a group of women from Women's Intercultural Network, we went to Afghanistan. And I took the translation, Persian and Farsi translation of CEDAW with myself to Afghanistan. And I did a workshop in 2001 for Afghan women NGOs in Kabul. One of those women attending that workshop that I have been in contact with her just this morning, and it gives me chill talking about that. She sent me a message via Facebook because she saw that we have a session at UN NGOs about CEDAW. And she told me to tell all of you that we should not forget Afghan women. Mm. So it got me very emotional, but with that, I thought I have to share that message with you. So Women's Intercultural Network, as you all know, is a non-governmental organization with consultative status to the UN Economic and Social Council. WIN's mission is to ensure that all women and girls have a voice for full participation in their government and economy on the ground and on internet. WIN has been bringing the global to local since the 4th International Women Conference in Beijing, China. With the first state policy mechanism implemented the Beijing Platform for Action at the time with California Women Agenda. A major focus of WIN and the Platform for Action has been human rights policies and CEDAW, the Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. WIN is a spearheaded women's NGO and civil society organizing in support of implementation municipal CEDAW ordinance with the Cities for CEDAW campaign. I want to add that it's Cities for CEDAW and Counties for CEDAW. WIN served as co-chair and peer leader with the San Francisco Department of Status of Women, who worked with mayors and city officials on this campaign. WIN believes that implementing CEDAW can help to create a more civil society in the world and safe, healthy, sustainable cities and counties. And we invite you to join us in bringing the global local with CEDAW to the grassroots of America and US ratification of CEDAW. With that short note, I want to introduce June Mary Justice on the board of Women's Intercultural Network and Policy Director of US Women Caucus. Thank you.
Thank you, Elahe, and thank you for sharing the beautiful story about your connection and WIN's connection with the women of Afghanistan. I know today we're all holding in our hearts the women of Ukraine, the women in conflict regions everywhere, and I deeply appreciate that personal connection that you have and that WIN has created with our sisters in Afghanistan. So, welcome everyone. Really excited for this panel today. We've started to bring together a lot of work around this CEDAW initiative and this interest in really making sure that women's rights and girls' rights are lived out at the local level. So today's panel and today's conversation is going to be focused on several different aspects. And as we begin, we're going to be listening to three of our incredible leaders in this space. And following those words of inspiration, we will talk a little bit about this campaign of Cities for CEDAW, which promotes gender equality at the local level, where women live and families live. And then this session will also provide updates on 3 of the current CEDAW initiatives from the Midwest, the mountains, the rural and urban areas, so that you'll have some really good context. We'll also highlight the future of human rights in addressing climate issues. And we have an incredible individual who works at the intersection of climate justice, global health. And then finally, we're going to conclude by talking about the future of this movement. And we have some young women who are carrying these interests forward and really thoughtfully approaching this from an intersectional perspective. So we're delighted. And with that, do we have Farah Khan, the mayor of Irvine, on the call yet? Or should we? Mayor Khan, are you with us?
I don't see her yet.
I don't see.
Okay, so then what we're going to do is I'm going to switch the order and bring in Krishanti Dharmaraj. She is currently at the Center for the Women's Global Leadership at Rutgers University, but Krishanti has been instrumental in the Cities for CEDAW movement, and Krishanti is really a stellar leader in bringing the first human rights treaty down to the local level. So we're delighted that she's taken the time to join us here today. And she was the founder of and one of the architects of San Francisco's CEDAW Ordinance. So she continues to inspire us and support this campaign. So welcome, Krishanti.
Thank you so much. It is really an honor to be with all of you. And I miss California every time we do these CEDAW gatherings. I want to really recognize WIN's undeniable commitment to really pushing forward an agenda that from time to time is not even recognized in the country, right? So thank you to Marilyn, who worked with me a long time ago. I don't want to date myself too much, but I want to also recognize that human rights are not about the way the world is. It is about the way the world ought to be, right? And really quickly, it was in 1996, we decided that we needed something different in San Francisco. It was really in response to Proposition 209, which was the anti-affirmative action proposition that California passed, right? And Proposition 187, the anti-immigration proposition that California passed, right? And federally, we were dealing with welfare reform. So the work we began was really in response to those conditions that really pushed women back, as well as looking to what do we want beyond just surviving? What do we need in order to thrive? And therefore, local implementation, passing of an ordinance of a human rights treaty was born, right? So it's 26 years, and I want to, we are in a post-George Floyd, post-Breonna Taylor, current pandemic, increased femicide world, right? While the world in Earth is warming up, and then there are natural disasters. So in this context, we have to really look at what can we do locally, right? how do we construct conditions for us to be fully human? And how do we center women in that process? And I want to give you 3 snapshots of the good that has come out of San Francisco, because I know you're going to talk about how to do this work. So I want to start off in saying that after CEDAW was passed in San Francisco, the Commission on the Status of Women, which was less than 700,000, and I know it's considered a lot nationally, right, went to becoming a department, which means that it transitioned from being active as the pleasure of any mayor who could have just pretty much closed it off depending on who the mayor was, or reduced the budget, to establishing it as a department, taking gender equality seriously, right? I think that's something to keep in mind for all cities and counties. The second I wanted to bring up is that more women were brought into leadership. San Francisco had over 51% women in leadership across the city, right? But we did not want to settle for that number because they were not in income generating powerful positions, right? So the shift was really around positioning women, and the first woman of color actually to the Airport Commission, right? And transportation, Port Authority, fire, police. Those are the powerful commissions, and predominantly men were running those, right? So that transition is an incredibly important piece right now for women in the United States. The third is that for 14 months, San Francisco went without a femicide. And that is because of a beautiful coordination and an alignment around preventing gender-based violence. So I want to say 3 things about how we have to keep CEDAW at a local level alive. And when you are feeling really low and down and when things are not going right, just to keep 3 things in mind. 1 is about timing, right? It is about internal and external timing. Who's in power, who's not in power, who can run it, right? The second is about strategy, right? Strategy and leadership, knowing when to step out and step up, to step aside and step back. Stepping back is not a retreat. Stepping back is a strategic moment and a time that we have to really recognize in our work. And the third is about the political will, because whoever it is in power needs to want to do this and support our work as activists at a local level to shift policy and put money into it. And I mean, I think Gail quoted me yesterday, passing in itself is not enough. It's about having the money to implement and holding local government to account to ensure that women's rights are indeed human rights. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Krishanti. It's just incredibly inspiring, and I really appreciate you mentioning Marilyn from the beginning and then bringing this all full circle about the evolution of this movement. So thank you so much. With that, do we have Mayor Khan on the call yet?
Let's see her.
I think something is going on because I just sent her an email. So we were expecting her here. So we can move on, and if she joined, we can then have her few minutes.
She will. She'll join us
Great,
eventually.
great.
So we'll keep an eye out. I'll alert you when I see her.
Okay, no worries, no worries. Yes, just for context, Mayor Farah Khan, who is the mayor of Irvine, brought the CEDAW resolution to her city and is continuing to support incredibly for this campaign. So hopefully we'll get a chance to hear from her personally. But with that, what I'm going to do is move to Soon Young Yoon. She has sent us a video. Soon Young has been a part of this movement since the beginning as well. She's the chair of the board of the Women's Environmental Development Organization, or WEDO, as most of us know it as, and a UN representative for the International Alliance of Women. She is also deeply involved at the UN Commission on the Status of Women, and you'll see her everywhere. I believe the reason she's sending a video is because she's been called to a high-level meeting, and I think that she may be meeting with the Secretary. Gail, did you mention that she has a meeting with the Secretary General?
She said the President of the General Assembly,
Got it.
which is very high level.
Great,
Yes.
great. So we'll cut her some slack for today. But anyway, let's load up her video, and if we could hear from her, that would be terrific. We don't have audio, Ruja.
Oh, really?
Ruja, we still do not have audio.
In 1980, I was a member of
There we go.
Secretary
Now we don't have video.
for the Second World Conference on Women in Copenhagen.
When you share the screen, there's a checkbox you have to click for share computer sound.
Yes, it's clicked. Let me download it. I'm going to open it up. Give me one moment. Sorry.
So would you like me to circle back to this? What do you think, Gail?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So with our little technical glitch, I am going to pass the mic over to an individual who really brings together the intersection of the feminist agenda with global health and with the environment. This is Dr. Ilham Humnafar, who is the Assistant Professor of Global Health Studies at Northwestern University. And she has a perspective that can help us to create the linkages between what's happening at the global level and how we implement these strategies at the local level, which we'll shift back to. So with that stated, I'd like to pass the mic to Ilham.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. This is the first time I'm in this event, and I really appreciate for invited me. And I would like first to share with you guys my PowerPoint. Maybe it helps you guys to understand my accent better. So today I would like to have an ecofeminist perspective for environmental justice in global South and North. So today I'm talking about a part of ecofeminist approach to global environmental justice for cities. As you can see in this graph, after 1900, the number of natural disasters has increased. And we believe 21st century would be a century of disaster. When we are talking about disaster or environmental hazard, we are talking about extreme events on the earth and its ecological system that may cause adverse consequence for humans. But there is a big global injustice regarding climate change. The cause of climate change is in global north, actually, because 75% of world annual carbon dioxide, that is the main reason for climate change, came from global north, which is 15% of global population. But as you can see, the main impact is for global south. In this map about disaster risk index for United Nations, As you can see, the global south has more disaster than global north, but they don't have the same responsibility for causing carbon dioxide. So Africa, Latinos countries, Asia are in serious danger because of climate change, because of history of colonization and poverty. They don't have enough money to protect themselves with some policy for mitigation and adaptation. So ecofeminism tell us the root of the exploitation of women and nature are the same and help us to have critical understanding of power relationship and political economic system in connection with gender separation and ecological degradation. So here I have an example to show how this issue is really connected to each other. I mean, environmental degradation, political economic system, and gender separation. We know about some assembly plants in Global South, particularly because in globalization, the capital can go to different parts of the world, but not labors. And why, for example, these American companies and factories go to Mexico? Because there are cheaper labor in that area, fewer governmental regulation, and there is no tax for those companies. But what is the result for Mexico, for example, as an example? There are lots of social and environmental impact, abuse of workers' rights, that most of them are women actually, and environmental degradation. When we are talking about environmental degradation, we cannot talk about nation state because we have only one ecosystem, one earth, and we are talking about global problem actually. But some things that happen for these cities, particularly for women, are some social problem like femicides. Since 1900, hundreds of women murdered in a small city in Mexico after these companies. And those factories or company left Mexico because they found cheaper labors in South of Asia. So it can be a good question why women are more vulnerable in this process. One reason back to poverty issue. Actually, today I'm talking about just two reasons. There are many other reasons too. World's poor are women. 70% of people who are living in poverty are women. Women have less access to basic human like ability to free move and acquire land. And also women, for example, represent around 43% of global agricultural workforce, but they face countless barriers to economic independence. In some countries, almost half country in the world, women are denied property rights, and also they have a lots of problem to borrow money for their agriculture or have access to sell their harvest. Another reason back to women are not policymakers and decision makers. Women, particularly in local communities in Global South, have been systematically excluded from the decision-making process about natural resource and social life. Women hold only 12% of top national ministerial position in environmental sector worldwide. Indeed, we cannot hear women's voice for environmental issues and natural resource in environmental policy making. So, ecofeminist perspective tell us to have, ask us to have a critical perspective about this issue and focus on multiple forms of inequality, more intersectional analysis to understand what's happening in Global South and Global North, or even in local level or national level regarding environmental justice. So shortly, if we want to have an ecofeminist perspective for cities, we should know we need to make social network globally to protect our nature and social justice. Each city should find connection to other city, particularly in Global South, to institutionalize environmental protection and stop exploitation of nature women in Global South. We need to see all aspects of injustice. One big problem that we have in all cities in United States is environmental racism now. African American or Native American are living in some places that we don't have, healthy or clean water or environment. Another thing that ecofeminists tell us about this injustice is local communities, women and minorities should be in decision-making process for all policies about cities, not only about women's lives or, environmental issues, about cities, about natural resource and plans for climate change, such as preparedness, mitigation, and adaptation. In general, if we would like to have environmental justice, we should know as long as these women, cities, and villages in the global south don't enjoy environmental justice, no city in global north will enjoy environmental justice. Thank you very much, guys.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you. Excellent. Thank you. Really.
June Mary,
Thank you, Alham. I appreciate that perspective. And I think it's a helpful kind of segue for us, for the Women's Intercultural Network, because we like to look at things holistically as well, and which is really what the focus is with regard to creating these linkages across the globe. And we have circles that the Women's Intercultural Network has reached out to and created those networks that you're talking about, so that we really have a sense of the lived experience of other women who are in parts of the world that are often detrimentally impacted by the decisions we make here in the North or in the West compared to the East. So with that stated, one of the things that I thought of that was so interesting is a policy that was implemented by the state of Illinois. And it was an example of this kind of transformative sorts of legislation. And I think we can learn a lot from these sorts of initiatives that help to, as you mentioned, put women in positions of leadership and centering environmental justice and not just environmental initiatives and how we transform. So they've created this groundbreaking Climate and Equitable Jobs Act, and they're retraining women into these positions of leadership. And it's an example for us of how state level, but then also how we can look at these implementations at the local level to ensure that what we're doing actually has a transformative effect on the lives of women, as well as creating a more sustainable future for us moving forward. Does Mayor Khan have a link, and is she available to jump on?
June Mary, I think something came up. I just forwarded to you and Roja a link that of a short video message.
Okay, do you want to try to play that, Roja? Okay, Roja's going to share her screen. And
as we're waiting, go ahead. I was going to say, while we're waiting, we'll just say that Mayor Khan was instrumental in bringing CEDAW to Irvine, California as a city council member. And when she became mayor, she moved it quickly. And so we're very glad to have her presence with us today, either in person or by video.
No sound. Oh. Let me see if I can load it from my end. Okay, well, I'm really sorry that we are unable to hear Mayor Khan's audio at this moment. But I do want to continue to share with you a little bit of the work that's happening with Cities for CEDAW, and then move to our briefings from several cities who are doing the work on the ground. So one of the points that I think is important and that came up this year, because the commission, as we know, is focused on this intersection of climate and gender. So as the Women's Intercultural Network does each year in preparation for the commission, we prepare statements that are submitted to the Economic and Social Council of the United Nations. And we're really proud that we've been able to contribute to this conversation for many years. This year, we looked at these intersections and we looked at the work that we're doing in cities. And we recognize that there's a huge overlap in the sustainable cities movement and the human rights frameworks that we're trying to implement at the city level and that are being implemented at the city level, and the work of Cities for CEDAW. So we found that what's so interesting and encouraging is that the work of Cities for CEDAW has such an amplification effect on the work that's happening at the grassroots level to create sustainable cities by virtue of increasing women's leadership and understanding the disproportionate impacts that women face at the grassroots level to all sorts of social issues, and in particular, their frontline impacted in terms of climate, not only adaptation challenges, but also they're detrimentally impacted at a higher rate because they tend to stay focused with their families and they're in frontline jobs and they're the caregivers. And so, as we know, all of these things are just so interwoven. So the Cities for CEDAW, what's exciting is I think it's an opportunity for cities to recognize that by virtue of moving this agenda forward, they're able to really address so many of the challenges that they're facing, whether that's diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the sustainable cities movement. So as we begin to kind of look at what some examples are, I think I would like to turn it over to some of the individuals who have been instrumental in moving this work forward at the local level. We're so fortunate today because we have 3 cities to talk about. First, we have Bozeman, Montana, and Jan Strout, who is part of Bozeman for CEDAW, and she's the president of the Montana National Organization for Women, has been really a frontline individual for pushing for this implementation in her city. And so if I could, I would like to just turn it over to Jan for a moment.
Thank you. And again, a great honor to be here. My name is Jan Strout. My pronouns are she, hers, and I am one of the 3 co-leaders in a very collaborative volunteer process and a co-founder of our Bozeman Cities for CEDAW. We are a group of people that also have an action arm known as a task force on the status and safety of all women and girls. We began our Bozeman for CEDAW, City for CEDAW initiative in late 2017, consulting widely with our current mayor and city commissioners, city staff, as well as the diversity of women leaders, NGOs, and allied organizations on feasibility and support. Building and expanding these relationships are key, as we all know. In May 2018, after gathering nearly 1,000 signatures on a petition in support of an ordinance for Bozeman City for CEDAW to advance gender equity in our community, we had endorsements, 40 NGOs or more, 20 plus letters to the editor. The local newspaper endorsed it. 100 people came dressed in red to honor the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, with 25 taking up the entire public comment. And 3 out of 5 commissioners supported us. We still couldn't gain any consideration for a passage. So we regrouped. We compiled a 2019 report on the status and safety of all Bozeman women and girls from 46 data sources, held a press conference in front of the statue of Jeanette Rankin to announce, and organized even a more diverse intersectional task force as its action arm. And I'm pleased one of our members will be sharing shortly. Our 3 action groups in that task force were designed to really communicate understanding of what is a CEDAW women's human rights framework and what are the elements of this incredible women's rights treaty. And how can our specific actions in these action groups actually help build power and support? So we ask these questions. How safe is our community for women and girls? How economically secure are Bozeman's women and girls? And what are the challenges to health and well-being of Bozeman women and girls, which also can give us an environmental lens? Then came the pandemic, the economic crisis, which laid bare and worsened these existing disparities and impacts on women and girls most marginalized and underrepresented. These were our headlines about why a U.S. city for CEDAW was essential. We used our annual equal pay day events that resulted from an earlier victory of passing an equal pay resolution. We presented testimony at our city commission observance and all the time, and letters to the editor, presenting to community, university, and businesses. But we needed more support from our local elected officials. So in 2019 and in 2021, we started an electoral strategy ranging from creating and distributing a voter's guide on equity, fairness, and human rights using CEDAW-themed questions to all candidates for city commission and the school board, followed by an in-person candidate forum with live streaming, etc. This allowed every candidate and all the voters to be educated about CEDAW and why needed. I'll share those links in the chat when I'm finished. But as a result, all of the 2021 City Commission and school board candidates endorsed our issues that won and were supported endorsing a Bozeman City for CEDAW. So fast forward 2022. The city commissioners unanimously included a Bozeman for CEDAW in the city's 2-year priorities of their strategic plan. And surprisingly fast to us, after 4 years, the city of Bozeman staff just proposed a resolution under the title of establishing a Bozeman City for CEDAW, set for consideration and adoption on April 5th. So we are pleased and also want to ensure that this proposed resolution can fulfill the requirements of cities for CEDAW. So as we speak today, we're basically working with each of our city commissioners to propose a set of amendments that will basically evaluate what we consider some data that is missing and issues of inclusion to address as an intersectional, which in a way that would become an intersectional gender analysis, thus requiring an annual report and plan of action to align with our equal pay resolution and institutionalize this framework, as Krishanti said so eloquently and powerfully. And of course, we'll be engaging the community. But equally important, I want to especially appreciate the support and the power of having these women mentors, ranging from Krishanti, Soon Young, Gail James, Marilyn Fowler, the Women's Intercultural Network, and Cities for CEDAW, which brought us in Bozeman the most helpful and insightful recommendations, even if we couldn't use them all. And in summary, I hope this has demonstrated both the challenges, some solutions, and best practices and accomplishments that persistence, creativity, committed volunteers, and leadership can bring to this most essential pathway to achieve our women and girls' human rights. When adopted, Bozeman will be the first city in Montana, but not the last, to establish a city for CEDAW. Thank you.
Fantastic. Yes, great. So good. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you so much. All right. I'd like to turn to Rosemary Straley of the League of Women Voters, and she's in San Diego and a part of San Diego CEDAW Task Force. Rosemary?
In telling you our story of San Diego, our journey toward a CEDAW ordinance in 5 minutes, I'll begin 15 years ago and address 3 prerequisites we have found absolutely essential for affecting this progressive change in public policy. 1, a savvy nucleus of individuals committed to the goal. 2, a favorable political climate. 3, supportive community-based organizations. First, beginning with the savvy nucleus of individuals committed to the goal, in this case, adoption of a CEDAW ordinance by the city and by the county of San Diego. A half-dozen feminists were sufficient. As Margaret Mead reminds us, Never doubt a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. In San Diego, we began with stalwarts who bonded during Hillary's campaign for president in 2008. It helped that we were knowledgeable about local politics and had a good understanding how local government works. That's been all important for figuring out how to proceed at each step. The second prerequisite is a favorable political climate. And if you don't have that, you must help create it. When I moved to San Diego in 2007, the county was red. The Board of Supervisors was entirely Republican, 5-0, and the city council was predominantly Republican. In that context, it was not possible to get attention to issues like gender or race. A crucial step the committed nucleus took in 2008 to help create a more favorable political climate was establishing a bipartisan organization, Run Women Run, to identify, inspire, train, and support San Diego County pro-choice women for elective office. To date, 148 have been elected to offices at local, state, and national levels. 42% of them women of color. So progressives have worked diligently, and election by election, composition of these two major governing bodies began to change, aided by our change in demographics. San Diego now is truly a microcosm of the world, with 39% of households speaking a non-English language at home. With 3.3 million population, San Diego is the second largest of 58 counties in California. With the 2020 election, the Board of Supervisors flipped, and now with a 3-2 majority, the county is energetically tackling critical issues. It's time to catch up. San Francisco, as you've heard, passed its CEDAW ordinance in 1998, and Los Angeles its in 2003. A newly elected supervisor, a prominent Latina leader endorsed by Run Women Run, for years was vice president for community outreach for Planned Parenthood. She championed the CEDAW ordinance, which the Board of Supervisors is scheduled to adopt next month. That action will encourage the 18 cities in the county to enact their own ordinances specific to each city. Half of county residents live in the city of San Diego. Another Run Women Run woman, elected to the city of San Diego City Council, sponsored introduction of a CEDAW ordinance in mid-2020 after progressives achieved majority status on the council. And the first time ever that women outnumbered men 5-4. And by the way, all 5 women were Run Women Run candidates, and the city council chair was a Latina lesbian. Then with COVID and the election, the process stalled. So we're continuing to cultivate council members and their staffs, which is so necessary. The third prerequisite is to gain the trust and engagement of a wide range of organizations in the community. And that's what Jan has made reference to. Those whose voices in support of a CEDAW ordinance will assure its authenticity, adoption, and implementation. In San Diego, the League of Women Voters mobilized 4 dozen community organizations in a centennial coalition to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment, which granted women the right to vote. This coalition formed a CEDAW working group, which studied ordinances and other documentation on the city's for CEDAW website. We drafted an ordinance which was reviewed by the coalition organizations and then submitted to City Council. Representatives of these organizations advocate for the ordinance by testifying, writing letters, meeting with council members. They present a bulwark of confidence, which is essential for building and sustaining public understanding and support for the objectives of the CEDAW ordinance.
Rosemary,
We hope,
Rosemary, we're just going to need to, if
last
you could
line,
really quickly wrap.
we hope this effort finally will come to fruition this year for the city of San Diego as we commemorate the 50th anniversary of Title IX. Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. And I apologize for interrupting you. I just wanted to make sure that you knew where we were on time, but that's an extraordinary story from San Diego, and so grateful for the work and the heavy lift of you and the task force. All right, so finally, we don't have a lot of time left. So one of the things that we would love to share with you is a video that we received from the mayor of Cincinnati, yes?
Toledo, Ohio.
Toledo, Ohio. And our Ardenia Jones Terry from Zonta International was a leader in the CEDAW campaign there in Toledo, but the mayor of Toledo has given us a beautiful kind of testimony to the importance of CEDAW at the local level. Ruja, are we still struggling with the audio? Are we okay?
Let's try. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Wade Kapsakavich, Mayor of the City of Toledo, Ohio, and I am so excited that my city is a city for CEDAW. As you know, CEDAW is an international treaty passed by the United Nations in 1979, stands for the Convention on the Elimination of All Discrimination Against Women. It is the only international human rights treaty pertaining to women. CEDAW has existed as an important guidepost in making sure that women are treated with dignity and respect, not just in the workplace, but everywhere. The city of Toledo is thrilled to pass an ordinance, Toledo for CEDAW. I want to thank City Councilwoman Tiffany Preston Whitman and Councilman Nick Comives, who were the primary sponsors of our ordinance. Signing on as co-sponsors were all of the women on City Council, and I can tell you that we made some history recently. Now a majority of Toledo City Council is made up of women. We have 12 members of City Council, 7 of them are women, and this is really keeping with one of the things that makes Toledo so special, is that we've always been led by strong, dynamic women leaders. Our Congresswoman, Marcy Kaptur, is the longest serving woman in the history of Congress. We've had women all throughout elected office, county commissioners, mayors, of course in business and culture, and just throughout the history of Toledo, going back to our founding. We hope other cities join us in recognizing the importance of equality and embracing the step that the United Nations took in 1979 in passing what is still the only human rights treaty pertaining to women.
Fantastic.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Now, do we have a minute for Mayor Khan's video, or should we move to, we probably need to move to wrapping our session with our youth leaders that are here. Yes? What are our thoughts? Gail, would you like me to?
I think we have time because we have 90 minutes, don't forget. We go to 2:30, so East Coast time. So I think we're okay. I think let's try and see if Mayor Khan's video will show. If not, we'll move to our wonderful young people. And please remind everyone to put their info in the chat so we can stay in touch with you and share the other CEDAW initiatives this week that are happening.
Yes, please do. Thank you for reminding everyone. All right, so back to Ruja. We're going to try to hear some words from Mayor Khan.
You're muted.
At the Cities for CEDAW panel. Hi, I'm Mayor Farrakhan from the city of Irvine in California. And I'm so excited about the Cities for CEDAW panel because working on CEDAW in our city has provided us the opportunity to look into areas like paid leave for women experiencing domestic violence, food insecurity, and so much more. I can't believe that even today, we are discussing basic rights for women. I know we have a lot of work ahead of us, but I also know that together we will get there. Thank you so much to Elahi for her continuous efforts to bring CEDAW into every city.
Thank you. Thank you. Excellent. Good. Thank you. Good. Good. Great.
All right, thank you so much, Ruja. Gail, would we want to circle back to Soon Young? Do we have that much time in the agenda or shall we move forward?
I believe we do. We'll go to the half hour. So we're coming up on the hour. So we go to the half hour. We want to have time for questions, but if we could play Soon Young's, I think it would still set the stage for the next discussion.
Great. Okay. Thank you so much. Go ahead, Ruja. And thanks everyone for your patience.
Hi there. I'm Soon Yoon, the UN representative for the International Alliance of Women. In Korean, my name means peace. I want to thank the Women's Intercultural Network for the wonderful work that you have done over the years for the Cities for CEDAW campaign. You are helping to change the world, even though you may not realize it. And I need to explain what I mean by that. So what is happening in the world is that people watch what is happening here in the United States. It is one of those things which I have noticed from my travels, and I want to make sure that you realize how much what you do here in the United States means for other women in other countries. So in 1980, I was a member of the UN Secretariat for the UN for the Second World Conference on Women in Copenhagen. And at that meeting, we introduced CEDAW to governments. I remember thinking it was great that they signed the treaty, but the meeting pretty much went on as usual. And for several years, we didn't really hear much about CEDAW. But over time, I have seen how CEDAW has helped countries who, like Afghanistan, needed to find a roadmap to build a new country and a new democracy. In Afghanistan, it helped influence the constitution so that women would have greater voice and equal representation in government. And in many other post-conflict countries, it has helped to stabilize their justice system and to really build stronger democracies. Today, we know that 189 countries have ratified CEDAW and signed on to this wonderful landmark victory for women's human rights. I believe that the treaty gained momentum partly because it had a very strong accountability mechanism in the CEDAW committee, those 23 experts who sit there like very helpful judges, helping governments in their reporting, guiding them on what they can do in all areas of the CEDAW, from violence against women to the most recent general recommendation on natural disasters in the context of climate change. The second reason why CEDAW has gained strength is because of people like you, ordinary citizens and really active women's movement leaders and youth groups. What we have done is build a constituency that has brought CEDAW to life in countries. And through shadow reports to the CEDAW committee, we have reported alternative data and evidence showing what was really happening in countries so that the CEDAW committee could come to better recommendations to governments on how they could improve their implementation. Still, even with the great success and importance of CEDAW at the local level, it has really been uneven in its implementation. So can you imagine that Russia actually ratified CEDAW in 1980? And yet we know that the implementation of that treaty in that country has not been able to bring women the full freedoms and liberties that they needed to be able to participate in a democracy. So that's why your campaign is so important. It's bottom up, it's going to a place which is leading the world in many ways to a better way to implement CEDAW at country level. You may know that Krishanti Demaraj was really instrumental in starting this idea of having cities adopt CEDAW as a city ordinance. When she came back from the UN Fourth World Conference on Women in Beijing, she wanted to do something local. And through those efforts, was able to have San Francisco adopt CEDAW as a legally binding city ordinance in 1998. Then in 2014, when I was chair of the NGO Committee on the Status of Women in New York, we were looking for a way to revive and accelerate implementation of CEDAW in relationship to the Beijing Platform for Action, which you know is our main policy guide at the UN on gender equality and women's empowerment. And we saw this amazing historic action in the United States at the seat of where the UN first started in San Francisco. And so we asked the late Mayor Lee, to be the peer leader for mayors in the United States. And he introduced CEDAW to the National Conference of Mayors in the same year, where more than 200 mayors adopted CEDAW in a resolution and in their own way actually pledged to support it back home. We were absolutely overjoyed and grateful to the late Mayor Lee for doing this. The rest is history. So we know that now there are more than 53 cities, counties, and states that have ordinances or resolutions. And I love the campaign, which is the CEDAW Challenge, which has been started to make politicians pledge personally to support CEDAW in California. That's a wonderful campaign. You're going to see more of that, I'm sure, in the years to come. But we also have big news to break for you. On March 21st, I will head to Toledo, Ohio, to help them celebrate their new ordinance on CEDAW. It's part of their celebration of the Women's History Month. We'll do it at the Toledo Art Museum. And in fact, the City Council is passing CEDAW ordinance today, making it part of your history. I wanted to leave two thoughts with you. One of them is something I've already mentioned, which is don't forget that the world watches America. What you do here in making history helps progress for women and girls in other countries around the world. We have this campaign has made two major reports, consolidated national reports. I took a delegation twice to Geneva to report to the CEDAW committee on this campaign. And each time the CEDAW committee members have had nothing but praise. They've been inspired by what you're doing here. In fact, the CEDAW expert from Nigeria said she wanted to bring this campaign to her country because although they had national legislation lined up and in harmony with CEDAW principles, and even down to the provincial level, she had difficulty to bring it to cities. And so she decided that she would try to work more with cities to bring it bottom up. Dubravka Simonovic, who was the former chair of CSW, wonderful champion, former special rapporteur on violence against women, has always supported this campaign. And she said this year, in fact, that she wanted everyone, every country, 189 countries that had ratified CEDAW, to do a Cities for CEDAW campaign in their country. The second thought I wanted to leave with you is that defending women's human rights and ending violence against women helps to bring peace to the world. I firmly believe that if women ruled the world, we would not be sending our children to war, and that we would not spend the billions of dollars that are spent in this country and in other countries like Russia on nuclear weapons. I think we are the peacemakers, we are the peace builders, not because of some biological superiority, but because we understand that what happens outside between nations eventually comes home. And for future generations, a CEDAW ordinance is going to make an extraordinary difference. It can make an extraordinary difference to the way in which we build a healthy city and a healthy planet and the survival of our community of life. I was so happy to discover the CEDAW Youth chapter of Miriam College in the Manila, Philippines. They are an energetic group of youth leaders, and they've been working with CEDAW now for almost 10 years on campus, have a great history, which I would like to have them share with students in the United States. They are excited to do the same thing. This year, they're doing a youth voter registration campaign, for example. So if you're interested in starting a campus for CEDAW, let me know, and we'll connect you with this CEDAW youth group at Miriam College. Thanks so much for watching and listening, and I look forward to lots of good things from your campaign.
Good.
Wonderful. Finally, as you can see, that we are delighted to be able to share Soon Young's remarks. And it was unfortunate that was a little bumpy at first, but we've recovered, and women are resilient, as we know. So this is another example of this resilience and the determination and the fortitude. And these are characteristics that we all need as we're moving CEDAW forward at the local level, as evidenced by what Rosemary and Jan have shared with us. So one of the other points that I love that Soon Young brought up was that there's a great youth movement that's beginning to be spurred. I mean, we have this group that she referred to who is in the Philippines, but we also have a Colleges for CEDAW that is unfolding here in the United States. So we want to lift up those voices and engage the youth. And in that regard, I'm going to shift to the future of CEDAW, and it's in the hands of some incredible youth who are passionate and understand these interlinkages between the environment, human rights, women's rights, and why CEDAW as an overarching sort of mechanism is able to impact economic justice, as well as violence against women, as well as environmental justice. So it's a very powerful tool. With that stated, I am going to introduce you to Roxana Akbari. She is at the UC Berkeley School of Law, and she joins us today. And she was an intern for Mayor Khan, so I'm sure she has some insights on the process in Irvine, and hopefully she can share with us her vision. Thank you so much for being with us today, Roxana, and I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, June Marie. Thank you so much for having me. Can you hear me okay? Awesome. So just to tell you a little bit about me, I am a first-year law student at UC Berkeley School of Law. Before that, I actually worked for Irvine Mayor Farah Khan for 2.5 years. My most recent position was her legislative deputy. So I got to work on a lot of important policy platforms, and including that was actually Irvine's CEDAW policy. Now, I learned about CEDAW when I was a delegate to the UN CSW in 2019, which I believe was the last year it was in person. So I was really lucky to be able to attend. And I was a delegate with the Iranian Circle of Women's Intercultural Network, who were very generous to give me a scholarship to attend. And during the different sessions that we attended, the Cities for CEDAW policy really stood out to me as a very sensible and creative grassroots policy solution to achieving gender equity and justice at a time when approaching really any national solutions felt nearly impossible in the US due to the national political climate. And through my role as Irvine Mayor Khan's staff, I helped draft and develop Irvine's CEDAW policy, which was a very inspiring initiative for me to be involved in and taught me a lot. I think that a local CEDAW policy can benefit young women by identifying gaps in city programs, funding distribution, and policies that may be creating gender inequity early on, and more importantly, put in place the legislative framework for developing programs to empower and inspire young women. I think that there is a lot of room to get the youth involved in this type of activism. From my time of working at the city of Irvine, I was so blown away by how much interest there was from youth to get involved in government and politics. Our office always got inquiries from youth as young as middle school all the way to college who were looking to get involved either as interns or as volunteers. So my best suggestion for cities to include youth in human rights initiatives is to provide them with volunteer and internship opportunities early on, even if it involves simpler tasks for the younger ones, such as letting them sit in on city council meetings or giving them projects to research how city government works. Because not only is this a fantastic professional development opportunity for them, but they also bring a very fresh and creative perspective to the table that those of us embedded in the bureaucracy of city government may not even think of. And bringing them in the process that early on helps empower them to continue doing that work and the activism as they grow older, and to pass it along to future generations too. And that's pretty much all I have to say on how to get youth involved. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It's so exciting to see Cities for CEDAW continuing to grow. And I will leave my email in the chat in case you'd like to connect with me after this panel.
Thank you so much, Roxana. I love hearing about your energy coming into this whole topic and then really embracing it. And grateful for the work you're doing. And I'm looking forward to seeing how the influence of these, newer feminist perspectives influence the creativity, as you mentioned, about how we move this forward. We also have another individual who's with us, and her name is Ellie Cornish. She is from Bozeman High School, working on a CEDAW initiative. She is at the high school level and really engaging her youth and trying to elevate these voices and the influence that youth have. So we're delighted to have her jump in and share a few thoughts. Thank you, Ellie.
Thank you so much. So I have been involved with CEDAW for about 2 years now, and as you heard from Jan, it feels like we've accomplished so much here in Bozeman, and I'm so grateful to have been a part of this because I was shocked, honestly, when I heard that the US was one of the very few UN countries to not ratify CEDAW. So I think it's so powerful that so many communities have come together and really worked to still make CEDAW happen, even though it doesn't exist and hasn't ratified on the federal level. And I think it's so important to involve youth because so many of these issues are not only limited to women, it's also girls and young women within the country. And so many of these problems happen and are set up so early. Issues from mental health and providing social supports, protecting reproductive rights, violence prevention. So many of the issues that we want to address when it comes to women exist for all ages. And can exist early on and happen in the schools even. So I think it's so powerful to hear voices from the youth and have them really involved in this conversation. And I'm so happy to be part of that. So I urge you all to continue your incredible work and listen to the voices of the young people and what they're telling you, because this really helps everyone across all ages. And it's been so inspiring to hear from you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ellie, and we need you. So make sure that you stay plugged in. We'd love to see you at the commission. All right. We do have Mayor Khan.
Sorry,
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
Okay.
Let me acknowledge Gail. Gail, you had your hand
yes,
raised.
sorry, before we move on, we have the pleasure of having 3 young women from the Philippines with us, CEDAW Youth. They're in the chat. They've left their contact information. They were not able to be with us originally, but if they could be acknowledged, and we will stay in touch with them and they will present with us at another time. So please go forward. I just wanted to call attention to that, because otherwise.
June Mary, I just want to say, I put in the chat that Mayor Khan is with us. She's at the White House, and she said she has few minutes to be with us. Otherwise, she has to go. So just FYI.
Okay. So,
Yes.
so how about, can the youth stay on for just a minute and we'll circle back? Okay, let's move. Let's introduce Mayor Khan. Do you want to give us a few words? We loved your video and we're so grateful for the work you're doing in Irvine. So take it away.
Hi, everyone, and my apologies. Late last week, I found out that there was an event going on that I was invited to at the White House. So I've been in and out of meetings today, heading back there again. So I had a few minutes before I head back and wanted to just check in and let you guys know how important it is for cities to pass the CEDAW resolution and take actions to help our women. For us in our city of Irvine, we were not only able to pass the resolution, but we also committed to creating a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee, which is now looking at ways of improving systemic issues for women. Such simple things such as making sure that they have paid leave if they're involved in any sort of a domestic violence situation, that they feel that they're stable, economically stable, making sure that we're working with our domestic violence shelters and seeing the needs that are applicable to women at the local level and installing them, creating ordinances and policies that'll be beneficial for so many years to come. So thank you so much for giving me this time, and I look forward to many more cities joining in and being a part of CEDAW, and hopefully one day, the US will ratify it as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time. That's really exciting. Make sure when you're chatting with the other mayors, I know my mayor or my city council is there in DC as well. So make sure you make a plug for adoption of a local ordinance. Okay, so that's exciting, Gail, that we have this youth from the Philippines joining us. And I think it kind of brings a lot of these threads together. I mean, Elham talked to us about, these divisions, these global divisions, and this is a group that's across the globe who understands the local implementation strategy. So let's turn it over to our youth from the Philippines. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, can I pass
You're
on
on mute. Angelica, you're on mute.
How about now?
Good.
Hang on.
Leslie
Hello?
and Nika, the two of you are on mute. So turning it over to you.
Hello, greetings of truth, justice, and peace to everyone, wherever you are in the world. We are CEDAW Youth, Miram College chapter, and as Mason Yun have said, we are based in Manila, Philippines. We are very much looking forward to work with everyone here, as we have informed that we are the only one CEDAW Youth in the global community. So we would really want to collaborate with anyone who would want to build their own CEDAW Youth, to spread the legacy of having their own CEDAW youth, because we know that youth is also the hope and the next generation where we can pass our legacies to.
Thank you so much. And thank you for taking the time for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
so much for
And we
this
definitely are
opportunity
here
as
for
well.
you to connect with. So please stay connected with us, and we welcome your input and insights. All right. So I know we want to save a little bit of time for Q&A. Are there any other outstanding issues? I defer to Gail because she leads our charge as Cities for CEDAW. I mean, she's been fierce. If you want to see some wonderful progress and resources, if you go to our Cities for CEDAW website and win, you will see the toolkit as well as a list of all of the cities who are engaged in this work, and it's quite inspiring. And I'm grateful. All of us are grateful to Gail because she's really been leading this charge.
Well,
okay,
thank you.
Do you have any questions in the chat?
I would say I don't see too many questions in the chat per se, although people might raise their hand. I see mainly a wish to connect and to stay connected with us. And we're very glad for that. We will record this and send this to you. We will also be sending out a survey that you can fill out. So we'll have our new report later in the spring. We do want to know who you are, where you are, what you're up to, and remember that that is what Marilyn Fowler, our dear president and CEO and founder of Cities for CEDAW with Soon Young and Krishanti highlighted, which is we network, we connect on the ground, on grassroots level, as well as on the internet. We want to stay connected with you. It is very important. As you know, CEDAW is the main mechanism that we have for bringing human rights into a policy network, a policy commitment of cities. So, and counties are joining us, and some states as well. So we're really excited about that. And thirdly, I want to just say, if you send us your materials, your whatever you have, newsletters, announcements, progress reports on your resolutions and ordinances, we will post them to the website. Everyone is share, everything is open to the public and to share. Thirdly, I want to say we have several other, the success of our movement, of our campaign, is that there are many CEDAW sessions at CSW this week and next week. So please look for them. We have two following this week. On Thursday will be the CEDAW Challenge, generating from California. Please check for that. That is on the 17th. And then on Friday the 18th will be Soon Young Yoon and Krishanti Demaraj will present a training that will try to adapt to what the current thinking is on your issues, your local issues, and put that into a new toolkit. That is on Friday at noon. So please look for those. We put some of that in the chat. Before you leave, we're not ending yet. We really want your contact information in the chat so we can stay in contact with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. And we do have a question here. How can other countries get involved in the Cities for CEDAW? And this was coming from Ireland. So one of the inspiring sessions that I was at a couple of years ago was when the mayor of Reykjavik, Iceland, talked about their implementation of CEDAW at the city level. And I was so inspired because they talked about some of the programs that had come from that. And they said every youth who is like, I think it's in their, what we would call like a sophomore year of high school, one of their essential readings is, it's by Chimamanda Adichie about we should all be feminists. And I thought, wow, that's so interesting that it's really rippled into their programmatic like offerings for their students. And so, yes, there are cities in Europe who are adopting at the local level. We're not as familiar with the movement over there, but we would love to be. And we would love to connect with you if you're in Ireland and would really like to see how you might do this at the local level. Happy to engage in a follow-up conversation. So please reach out. We want to work together. We want this to be a wave. This is not, we want the ripple to turn into a wave. So thank you for all you're doing to make that happen. And I am going to turn it over to Elahe for a moment, our Women's Intercultural Network president. She has her hands up.
Yeah, I was just going to say that several years ago, I was in Belfast, Ireland, and we met with Mayor of Belfast, and we talked about CEDAW. CEDAW was approved and ratified by Ireland in 1985. And so they need to circle back to their national government and follow that through. I know Ireland signed it in 1985.
And as you do this work, I would really love for you to make sure that you're keeping us connected to the work you're doing so we can amplify it, because really that's how we're going to create this wave. We need to know what you're doing. We need to know what obstacles you're facing. We need to know where you see, how you're creatively addressing the challenges that are contextual for your specific area, because then we're able to look at cities that are similar and what learnings we have across cities. So I would love to make sure that we stay connected. Any last minute questions? Okay, if not, then one of our dear founding members is on this call, Charlie Toledo, and she is a passionate feminist Indigenous voice who's on our board, and she always brings kind of a grounding perspective. So I'd like to give her just a minute for the last word, whether that's a remark or a blessing that moves this energy forward. I'm going to turn it over to Charlie, and thank you everyone for coming. Please make sure your contact information is in the chat.
Hi, thank you, Jean Marie. Thank you, all the panelists who spoke. I would love to hear more from the Filipina group. But as a perspective from Turtle Island, from the Indigenous caretakers and earth stewards for the last 60,000 years on this earth, we perceive the earth as a living being. And the neural networks that we're setting up with our virtual conference, the UN conference this year, is so much like the neural networks in our brain that reach from our physical body to each other, to all the sentient life upon the earth and through the cosmos. We are in a time of... My dog announces. My dog announces. We are a time of epic change, epic cosmic transition. So just with your breath, remember taking every small moment, every small movement, every action you do makes a difference. And especially then when we link together, imagine this UN conference happening around the world for 24 hours, 7 days a week is kind of like that cosmic cracking. It's the eggshell cracking, and the divine is emerging, the divine feminine, but it's not a dominance of the feminine, but a balance between the masculine and the feminine. We're moving into a period of compassion, a period of balance and harmony between each other as a species, as the two-leggeds, but also with the winged ones, the four-leggeds, all the creatures of the lakes, oceans, seas, the dolphins and the whales, the salmon in the rivers, the tree people, the rock people. We perceive the water as a living being, the rivers, one living being, one water, one earth, one air, one fire. All life is connected. And so it's a balance of the masculine and the feminine in all species, between the earth and the sun and our whole solar system. We're traveling through space. This cosmic darkness, the mother of us all, Tarahumara, she has several names in the ancient religions, the mother, the grandmother of all things, and it's her body, this darkness that holds the stars. Remembering that we are being held, we are connected through the cosmos and through the infinity of time and place. I just want to thank all of you, knowing that you are a very active part of the emerging feminine, the divine feminine, and what is becoming the balance between the masculine and the feminine, the masculine and the female. Oh, be well, stay safe.
Thank you so much. With that, I wish everyone a beautiful CSW. Please go on and see all of the vibrant sessions and tap into your own passion and to that spirit that you have to engage in this work. Thank you so much. From the Women's Intercultural Network.
Thank you so much for an awesome session.
Thank you very much for joining us. Make sure you download the chat with all the wonderful information that everybody posted to the chat. Thank you.
There will be a recording. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Great and small.
We will be posting recording to Facebook page.